Hello, welcome to a brand new season of A Closer Look. My name is Noel Clehane. I'm the Global Head of Regulatory and Public Policy at BDO, a global professional services organisation. I'm also a proud passport member of the Asia Society Switzerland. Welcome to A Closer Look, a series by Asia Society Switzerland with support from BDO and the Institute of Asian and Oriental Studies at the University of Zurich. In this series, this is the third one, we shed a light on Asian countries through the eyes of leading local voices. Today, we're kicking off the new season with Laos, which CNN called one of the must-visit places in 2023. Together with pioneering filmmaker Mattie Do and journalist Manyphone Vongphachanh, we hope to give you a sense of the country. In the last 15 minutes of the coming hour, we also want you to address your questions on Laos, and of course you're all familiar with putting questions in the chat, in the Q&A function, which can be upvoted by others. So the most popular votes and most popular questions will be asked at the end of the hour. So let's begin with a brief introduction of Laos, the country we're taking a closer look at today. So to set the scene, we have a number of slides taking us through the geography, the history, the politics, etc. So Laos, or as it's officially known, the Lao People's Democratic Republic, might be one of the least understood countries in Southeast Asia. Here's where it's located within Asia. It's one of the world's few remaining communist states, the region's only landlocked country and one of its poorest. It's wedged in between China, Myanmar, Vietnam, Cambodia and Thailand. In area, it's almost 6 times the size of Switzerland and a little smaller than the UK. The capital is Vientiane, and more than 500,000 people live there. It's the biggest city in Laos by a long way. It lies on the west side of the Mekong River, bordering Thailand. The country has a mountainous north, where you'll find also Laos' most popular town, Luang Prabang, with its spectacular waterfalls. The Ho Kam Royal Palace Museum and the Pak U caves are also found in this area. Laos has a population of around 7.5 million people. This map shows how they're spread out over the country, with most living in one of 4 cities, of which the capital, Vientiane, as I said, is the largest by far. It's one of Asia's most ethnically diverse countries. Ethnic Lao are the majority, with 53% of the population. And the official language is Lao, which has the same roots as Thai. With a median age of just under 20 years, Laos' population is in fact the youngest in Asia. Earlier this century, Laos was slowly moving up the UN's Human Development Index, which ranks countries by the lifespan, education level, and gross national income per capita. However, over the last 5 years, that progress has come to a halt, and the country now ranks 140th worldwide and third or fourth lowest in Asia. In terms of its economy, Laos is rich in mineral resources like coal, gold, copper, and has the potential to build a stronger economy based on those. But the country remains primarily agricultural, with 80% of the population working in that sector, mostly growing rice. The country's long-term ally is Vietnam, which promises military and economic support for the country as a result of a 1977 treaty. But more recently, its biggest foreign investor, certainly state investor, is by far China, which might become an issue for Laos' relationship with Vietnam in time. Private sector investors come generally from Thailand, Singapore, South Korea, and Malaysia. Continuing with its economy, electricity is the top export product of Laos, bringing in $1.93 billion a year, though I can attest to its fantastic coffee also here in Brussels, where I live. That's almost a third of total exports, and having the ambition to be the battery of Southeast Asia, Laos has built hydropower dams in the Mekong and elsewhere, and has many more in planning. However, the country is in deep economic trouble, facing record inflation of around 40%, and with high unemployment. It's very close to not being able to pay its debts and facing sovereign default. Its national currency, the kip, is in a free fall, losing nearly 80% of its value to the US dollar over the last 18 months. In terms of history, present-day Laos traces its historic and cultural identity to Lan Xang Kingdom, which existed from the 13th to the 18th century. The kingdom broke up in 3 separate kingdoms after internal conflicts, and in 1893, France united those kingdoms again under a French protectorate, which formed what we now know as Laos, which I believe is actually a French term, Laos. The country became independent in 1953, but soon fell into a civil war, which saw the communist resistance fight against the government, and the war ended with a victory for the communists in 1975. The new Lao People's Democratic Republic was founded then, with heavy military and economic dependence on the Soviet Union and isolation from much of the rest of the world. After the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991, Laos slowly opened up to the world and joined the WTO in 2013, and is hoping to connect itself with railways and other infrastructure to its neighbours in order to become a central logistics hub. I've seen the phrase used that it moves from a landlocked to a land-linked country. In terms of its government, Laos is a communist one-party state led by the Lao People's Revolutionary Party. As common in communist one-party states, the ruling party exercises strict control over the media. Non-governmental organisations rate the country's human rights record as poor. The most powerful person in the country is the General Secretary of the party, and since 2021, that role falls to Thongloun Sisulit, who is also the president of the country and pictured on screen. In the final days of 2022, the former Prime Minister was kicked out after only 24 months in office, the shortest of any Prime Minister since 1975. And he was replaced by Sonexay Siphandone, who is a party apparatchik. So that's, if I can invite that's a brief resume of the country and give you a sense of it. If I can invite our guest speakers to switch on their microphones and cameras, and I'll introduce them. So we have 2 excellent speakers today, both Laotian. Mattie Do is a Laotian-American filmmaker and the first horror film director in Laos. Mattie was born in Los Angeles, California, and moved to the Laotian capital, Vientiane, in 2010. Her directorial debut, Chantali, it was in 2012 and was the first horror film written and directed entirely in Laos. Her second feature film, Dearest Sister, was screened at more than 20 film festivals and was selected as Laos's first Oscars nomination for Best Foreign Language Film. And her third feature, The Long Walk, from 2019, premiered at the 76th Venice International Film Festival, and she has won the Best Director at the 45th Boston Science Fiction Film Festival. So welcome, Mattie. Our second guest.
Thank you for having me, Noel.
Thank you. Manyphone Vongphachanh, I hope I pronounced that correctly, Manyphone, is a journalist at the Laotian Times, which I believe is an online medium. She used to volunteer in areas such as the environment, in environmental management and community engagement prior to becoming a journalist. And Manyphone has covered a wide range of topics in Laos, written over 400 news articles for the Laotian Times on a wide variety of issues, including the economy, politics, business, travel, crime, health, sports, and current events. So we look forward to accessing your knowledge of many of those topics today, Manyphone. So thank you both for joining us. Thank you. We started this podcast by introducing Laos as one of the least understood countries in Southeast Asia. It's certainly one of the least well known to most of us here in Europe, despite being almost 6 times larger, as I said earlier, than Switzerland, and with a similar sized population, and almost as large geographically anyway as the UK. So let's see if we can give our online audience a sense of Laos today as we take a closer look at it. A question to both of you, but Manyphone, you might start. For most, COVID seems a thing of the past now, certainly here in Europe. But last year, Nikkei publisher ranked Laos last in a global assessment of COVID recovery, having looked at vaccination rollouts and how efficiently the government was dealing with COVID. So how are things in Laos now? How has the pandemic hit the country, and were you able to keep working throughout the COVID period?
So the COVID-19 came to Laos late than other countries, but it lasted long. and it ruined almost the whole tourism sections and education system. So we received some assistance from the US and China and ASEAN countries. Recently, we just lifted the vaccination card mandatory for arrival tourists, and the situation in Laos now, it's the country itself is still recovering from the stains that COVID has put on the country.
And Mattie, how did the COVID period affect you and your filmmaking?
For filmmaking, it was extremely difficult. I mean, generally filmmaking in Laos is always difficult, but because we had a very strict and enforced lockdown, running around the streets with a team and camera isn't very logical. But I think that for myself, it was a positive moment to be able to stay home and to develop and work on my next project and take the time to write the script and to build characters for my next films. So, I mean, I think in that way, I benefited from being able to stay home and not having to leave to do like smaller projects or having to focus on something that, was maybe didn't take as much time. I could just really stay and work on what I wanted to do next as a filmmaker. So that was really nice. But, even like Manyphone said, we had a very slow rollout of vaccines and et cetera. But what we had in our country was camaraderie. Lao people are very community oriented. And so when there was a lockdown, people didn't complain. There was no hostility about it and people helped each other. And when there were vaccines, in the beginning, it was really disorganized because everyone was trying to get the vaccine at the same time. But Laos became one of those countries where the population very willingly went to get vaccines and it was free. And encouraged. And so I think our COVID experience, even though to Nikkei, when they look at it, it looks like we were very poor and very behind other countries. But when you're living here, it actually functioned really well. People took care of each other. We had treatment. People were concerned about the COVID situation, and we didn't have the aggression and hostility that a lot of other countries had that politicized COVID.
That's great. That gives us a sense of the last 2 years, but hopefully it's behind Laos as well as the rest of the world now. I want to turn to the media landscape in Laos, Manyphone. What's the media landscape in Laos nowadays? I mentioned earlier that in a communist country, invariably all newspapers and media channels are controlled by the government. So is that the case in Laos? Is your media outlet very controlled by the government? And does it restrict what you can cover and how you cover it, etc.?
It's actually different, completely different. I would say we have a low internet penetration. The private media outlets, especially the English private media outlets, have more editorial freedom, and then the Lao media publishers, where the majority of audiences are Laotians, and when the Lao media publishers release any news, they need to be careful about the information, while it's less strict for private media outlets like Laotian Times. Yes.
And am I right in saying the Laotian Times is published in English?
Yes. Okay. English language. Yes.
English language. Okay, so it's not as controlled or monitored maybe as the Laotian language or Lao language.
Yes. Okay. Per se, yes.
Yeah. And what role does social media play in Laos? How accessible are social media and how tech savvy are young Lao people, the Laotian people?
Well, Lao had a very difficult time during COVID-19 as people couldn't receive information. So the government allow these cooperated with the both private state media outlets to help to contribute the information about COVID cases and daily deaths, and to warn people, what restrictions we may have. And I think that this has helped a lot, and that kind of changed the picture of the media from being very restrict to a little bit better.
Okay,
in terms of reporting.
Yeah. And what story have you found it most difficult to cover over the years? Not just in terms of maybe any restrictions you might be under, but in terms of its sensitivity or dramatic or access to it if it was in a part of the country that you couldn't get to.
I would say inflation rates would come to my mind when you read the question, because back in the day, I don't think the people here realize about the economic situation that much, because we don't engage in that politics or anything. Even some people don't realize like what their prime minister name is, and I think that also, it's great for Laos.
Okay, very good. Mattie, turning to you. Lao tourism promotes the country to the world as authentic Asia, alive with traditions now lost elsewhere in the region. That could be a euphemism. While it's a very enchanting term, it could be a euphemism for behind the times and backward. Is Laos behind the times compared to the rest of the region? And as somebody who returned to the country, though you're of Laotian origins, how do you think Laotians see themselves?
It could very well mean that, like, we could just be selling the fact that, our poverty makes us authentic in a natural way, kind of like these granola hipsters and backpackers are always trying to find their most authentic self by doing yoga in a field of rice or something, right? It could be that, but I don't think that is the case. Yes, we are very behind in terms of economic advancement and in terms of development. Yes, we are behind. We have a long way to go. But in terms of culturally, it is something we highly value. So it's part of our identity to value the fact that we're still very much in touch with our roots, that we still love our village sort of lifestyle. Like even now, it's 2023, and each neighborhood or quartier is called ban, like a village. We call ourselves, like, I live in this village in Vientiane, which if you've gone to Vientiane, it's very much not a village, right? And we still treat each other like that. All our neighbors we know each other by name. We still keep an eye on each other's properties. We're still friendly. You walk down the street and there could be a family or some people having dinner outside. They will always greet you. They will always invite you to the table, even if they don't know you. And so this kind of cultural warmth and community and authenticity is very real. We still wear our traditional dress, not because we're required to or because it's a costume. We actually really like our traditional dress, and we'll wear it all the time just for the heck of it. And I think it's a hilarious question to pose, because that kind of euphemism for old-fashioned or cultured authenticity, people seek it out. People go to places like Kyoto so they can wear kimono and so they can go take selfies under the cherry blossoms. And yet that's considered, wow, luxurious and amazing, Kyoto, the city of authenticity. And sometimes they're cosplaying it. Nobody's really walking around wearing kimono all the time, but they do it for the tourism. We actually wear our silk because we want to, not for the tourists.
So it is authentic. It's very much authentic.
It really is. Don't you think, Manyphone? I think it really is.
Yeah, I still see some women on the street wear them to work. Actually, it's not required, as you said. As you said, just say it now. People just feel like wearing it. It looks nice.
Yeah.
I wore it to a New Year party where people were wearing normal clothes, like mini skirts and dresses and stuff. But I had gotten a really cute traditional skirt for Christmas, and so I wore it to a New Year's party, and it wasn't required or strange or anything. It's just, oh yeah,
Okay.
what a cute skirt.
Okay. A question in the same area, I suppose, the same kind of subject. Do Laotians fully embrace the uniquely laid-back attitude to life, or is that just another slogan of the Lao Tourist Board?
No, we really value it. We super, super, super value the laid-back life. So in film, this matters a lot in film. We have a lot of, I do a lot of co-productions with other Occidental countries. And sometimes there's a lot of hustle culture, attitude of like, I want this now. I want this now. It has to be done now. And a lot of aggression on film sets. And that really turns off Lao people, because Lao people have this, we call it the sabai attitude, where it's just like, chill, just go with the flow. And we have to give an orientation to the foreigners who come and work on our films all the time, where we say, you cannot be hostile and push and be aggressive. And money will not fix your problem, because a lot of Westerners come here thinking like, well, if they don't want to work for me because they don't like how mean I'm being to them, I'll just throw more money at them, because these people in developing countries, all they really care about is money because they're poor, right? And so they'll offend someone by yelling at them on my film set. And then the person will quit and they'll say, well, I'll triple your salary if you come back. And that actually offends us even more, because then you've made them like lose face. And then they'll go talk to the rest of the crew and say, it's not worth it. We didn't come here to get yelled at like dogs to rush through life. We are put on this earth to like enjoy life and enjoy what is around us and to take it easy. And we have this term in Laos, Mopanyang, which means don't worry about it. Like, it'll work out. It'll work out.
Okay.
It's real. Again. It's real.
It sounds a bit like Mau Ben Rai, yeah? The Thai phrase. Yeah. Just moving on.
It means the same thing.
Same thing. Okay. Yeah. Moving to, I suppose, a topic that would be something I would know a bit more about, the economy. In the first 15 years or so of this century, Laos was slowly climbing up the UN's Human Development Index. But over the last few years, it seems to have stagnated and is now ranked in the last 3 or 4 in Asia. Why has this stagnation happened, Manyphone? And do you see the effects of it in daily life in Vientiane or elsewhere in the country?
Okay, I would say that the world situation back in 15 years ago was doing better with the people earning money or making some income, or the economy was growing. Laos was also doing all right, doing fine. I think more people went to school, more schools were being built, and people started get an access to education more, and they realized the importance of the education was this changed after the COVID pandemic emerged or occurred across the world, that poor countries, including Laos, struggled to deal with what was going on, while wealthy countries could manage that well. For example, students in developed countries in Europe, America, or elsewhere would complain how fatigued they were studying online, but students in the poor country they were just left, and they were out of the whole system.
Yeah. I don't want to bore our online audience with too many statistics, but I've seen some of the details around inflation, and the price of food has gone up 45%, transportation 50%, housing 30%, medical care 40%. How does the normal man and woman in Laos cope with that? How are they coping with these enormous price hikes? And does the new Prime Minister have any plan that either of you are aware of to address those kind of difficulties for the citizens?
Plan. I don't know about a plan, but I think the normal citizen is going into massive debt to survive. And that is really heartbreaking. There's a lot of strange money exchange right now. The American dollar is very desirable, and the Thai baht are very desirable. And so there were a lot of black market exchanges where people would go to try and exchange for a higher amount if they had access to American dollars or Thai baht. But then the government was trying to crack down on that because it was also making the inflation gap wider as well, right? So in terms of planning, in my sector, we didn't get a memo about any plan.
Right. Okay. I'll just briefly remind the audience, I see the first question has come into the Q&A. So if anyone in the audience wants to pose questions, we're going to allocate the last 15 minutes of the hour to your questions. So type it into the questions and answers section or upvote any other questions you see that you think are well worth asking, and I'll pose the most popular ones at the end. Just carrying on, as you mentioned, debt, Mattie. Over a year ago, the $6.8 billion high-speed railway between Vientiane and Boten on the border with China was opened, which has, of course, resulted in significant debt for the country. From the border, I believe the train now will speed on to the southern Chinese city of Kunming and has made the journey from Vientiane to Luan Prabang to only 2 hours, where it would have been 7 hours in a bus previously. And of course, it's the central part of the Chinese Belt and Road. Have either of you taken the train yet? Do people in general use it? And I know from talking to you earlier in the week that Laotian people find the ticketing system both amusing and frustrating. So tell us a little bit about that. Maybe Manyphone, you can start.
So I would say it's a very huge change. It's a huge game changer for Laos with the Laos China Railway. And if you look at the transportation in Laos, the roads, the constructions of the roads are being carried, or there's a lot of development plans on roads that haven't been set yet, I would say. And the railway allows Lao people or people in rural areas to be able to commute, to be able to get out from the outskirts of Laos and see more of the city side, despite the hectic situations to get the train ticket or the difficulties, all that. Yeah. Have
you been on the train yourself?
Yes, I have. Yeah. Many times also.
Okay. And Mattie, what do you think of it? And what impact has it made on Laotian life? And what have the Chinese brought that is both impressive and maybe surprisingly frustrating?
I mean, it's very impressive to be able to get to Luang Prabang in 2 hours, or into Vang Vieng in like less than an hour. It's super impressive. I was impressed by that. And the accessibility of Lao people being able to go to the city or to and do tourism in their own country, that was very new for us. And the tickets are extremely affordable. They're at a price that the general Lao population can afford. So you're seeing a lot of country people. It's really cute, actually. They're in Vientiane. Like you always know who came on the train because they're like taking selfies on the escalator because they've never seen an escalator before.
Wow.
But the train it's quite a normal train for those of you who live in Europe. It just seems like a regular European train, like SNCF style or like Deutsche Bahn style. And it's not terribly special in regards of the structure. But what's odd is it was made by mainland, and mainland Chinese companies have a way of doing things that is foreign to us. So for most of us in Laos, even though internet penetration is not high, most people have access to the internet through their mobile device. And so life has become really convenient for most Lao people. They buy things on their phone all the time. They just scan their phone. They reserve plane tickets or even buy delivery food. Like people will buy desserts online and just scan their phone for it. But you can't do that with this train ticket because it's not run through the Lao companies. It's run through the mainland Chinese company. And so some people have been lining up since before sunrise just to be able to be told that this train ticket is sold out. And the stations are completely finished, or neither have they thought about the comfort of the people who have to go to the station. So you're not allowed in the station, and so there's no bathroom outside, and neither is there any covering for shade. And so, you read all the time in the Laotian Times and online on social media about people who have been lining up for 4 hours just to get a train ticket, and then it rains on them or something. So it is very frustrating. And also that the mainland way for getting on a train is not show up 10 minutes before your train departs. They're trying to treat it like an airport, which, a train is not an airport, and making us line up an hour before departure outside to enter the train station and do a security check with no liquids and doing the x-ray as if it was an airport. So it's not just like, oh, I have a train ticket, let's hop on when my train arrives. And that's really strange for us in Laos, who were chronically late anyway to everything.
I see. And I believe that most of Laos's in excess of $13 billion debt to other countries is owed to China, and a significant part of it is due to the train project. Are Laotians generally profiting from these projects, not just the train, but any other infrastructure projects? If so, how? And is it a point of concern for educated Laotians that their country has become so indebted to China? Manyphone, do you want to take that?
Speaking of the debts, I think the country will still collect some revenues, huge revenues from the Laos China Railway, and I will mention about the ticketing system or the difficulties to get the ticket there. So. In China, they have very fast and convenient to get the train ticket. But the problem in Laos is I would say they have mentioned about this before that it's very difficult to manage the banking system in the app with the Lao banks that's the biggest issue. That why I would assume that why the app is taking so much time to complete.
Yeah. In terms of the other infrastructure projects, dams, hydroelectric dams, and large scale construction, that is also contributing to the national debt. Are Laotians concerned about that, and particularly given that it's so much of it is due to China, which has a history of leveraging its economic relationships for its own purposes? So, how do Laos feel about that, or do they think about it at all?
No, they do. On a general societal level, I think Lao people are very concerned about it. Lao people are concerned about the sovereignty of our nation. We're all like a lot of people, especially people who are more educated or people who are reading the news or who are searching about the news. They have seen what has happened in neighboring countries, the conflict between mainland and Vietnam, and also in larger places like Africa, for instance, in other continents. It is very concerning, but then it's not really up to us as a general population to be able to make these choices. Like, we're not the ones as a people who are signing any contracts for these projects. In terms of the other, like hydropower or special economic zones, it is currently very conflicting for most Lao people. The train seems like it could be extremely beneficial for us because of shipping, logistics, and tourism. But it's really early right now. It's really early, so it's hard to tell the benefits that we will see from this high-speed railway right now.
Yeah.
So that's difficult to say. But for other projects, it's like maybe not exactly what we expected.
Okay. Manyphone, are you allowed to write about these topics, or is it something you shy away from? By these topics, I mean national debt, infrastructure projects, dependency on China. Are they topics you're allowed to write to, or do you tend to shy away from them anyway?
We cannot say that we have no debts, or like it's not a very scary debt. It's debt. It's huge debt, but however, like the country needs development. The dam will help to generate more electricity, and that's you mentioned before that we export a lot of electricity. It generates most revenue for the country.
Okay. Yeah. Mattie, you mentioned the special economic zones, and the Laotian part of the Golden Triangle, which is probably the only thing I ever knew about Laos in the past, is run by China. So the Laotian part of the special economic zone in the triangle is run by China. What does that mean exactly? What's the current state of affairs in this zone, and how does it compare to SEZs elsewhere in the country?
I'm not sure how it compares to SEZs in other countries, because I don't really have experience with it. I do know that here in Laos, it's also a mystery even to us as Lao people about what is going on there, and the jurisdiction is completely different, because even in terms of governance, it's not run the same way as the rest of the country. So it is something that I think makes people very nervous. And locally, a lot of the news that we hear about controversy or even crimes or just a lot of different dramas are happening there. And I think a lot of people get nervous and anxious about the fact that it is such a big question mark. It is such a mystery for all of us, even though it's within the borders of our own nation. And unfortunately, I can't say much about it because it's such an ambiguous gray zone. It's like this no man's land that even us as Lao people don't really get to know about, because the jurisdiction is really different and laws are even different there.
Okay. And on the triangle itself, the Golden Triangle, a region along the Mekong where Laos, Thailand and Myanmar meet, I believe the Laotian police have rescued over 500 people in the last year. From trafficking. Is that drugs trafficking or illegal immigration, or what are they being rescued from?
All of the above.
Okay. And I presume the borders are porous in that part of the country.
I would say that the crimes situation and illegal trade or neurosis, that I would say that was reported more during the COVID time. So before the COVID time, EZATs in Laos ran pretty well. The casino were open and more activities in the zones were going on. And after the pandemic, things shift. More crimes and worse situations has happened there. And I think the zones benefits Lao a lot also, because it allows investors to put money on that. And I have heard that one of the zones have the Japanese camera Nikon company setting up over there, and they have the Toyota Japanese company over there, which is really good.
Fantastic. I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to move us on. Right? But I do see plenty of questions in the Q&A, which we'll get to in about 6 or 7 minutes' time. Mattie, you work in a creative industry, and what's more, you're clearly a pioneer in the world of Laotian films and introducing to the world outside of Laos as well. What makes Laotian films uniquely Laotian and different? How is the film sector in your country, particularly given that there are only 5 cinemas in the whole country? And do the government get involved in any way in restricting your filmmaking? A lot of questions there, but
yeah, that's a lot of questions. So let me try and cover that. The film industry is almost non-existent. We have less. I think that we have less than 10 film directors who are actively working right now. I'm the only woman making feature narrative films. Government involvement is very strong, but it is in every Southeast Asian country. Government involvement is strong even in Occidental countries where there are grants and there are like tax shelters and et cetera. Except in our case, people ask me a lot. People tend to ask me about censorship. And when you say what makes a Laotian film, I think that I have a huge privilege working in Laos because I have so much more freedom than most people do in other countries, because even though we have censorship, the censorship rules are very basic here. To get a film permit, the government has to read your script and okay it to get a permit. And the things that they usually censor are pornography, and I'm not making porn, you guys. Political commentary, which I'm also not a political science major. I don't really have interest in making some political thriller like House of Cards. And they're very worried also about commentary against other countries. Like if I made an anti-mainland Chinese film or an anti-American film or something like this. And yet if you've seen my work, which I'm not sure if anyone here has seen my work, the social commentary in my film is scathing, extremely scathing and hard. In fact, I even make a lot of social commentary on the development sector, and they allow it because as long as I can skirt the issue of, and the fourth thing is to not comment on religion and culture, especially ethnic minorities, because post-war, we had our reunification where we accepted all the tribal, the indigenous and ethnic minorities to be Lao people. We had a unification. And so the relationships are very tense, and they remain a bit tense now. But we've done such an amazing job at being like, we are all Lao people. But for me to make a film about an ethnic minority like the Aka or the Hmong would be completely not allowed, because I am not one of those ethnic minorities.
Okay.
And so these are the four things. And so I have a lot of freedom in doing whatever kind of movie I want. And I think that that's kind of amazing. And it's really amusing that I can just go up to them. I know who they are. There's 6 people in the government who handle film, and we know each other all by name. So I can harass them until they decide, Mattie, fine, instead of 50 dead bodies, 20. Okay, we stamp your
Wow,
paper, here's your permit. Go.
That's a very personalized form of regulation.
Personal.
Yeah,
very
good.
personal.
I'm conscious of time, and I do want to cover a few more topics, so we'll rush through what we have left. As I mentioned in the introduction, Laos is said to be the youngest country in Asia, with a median age of in around 20 years of age, which gives it a sizable youthful population, to say the least. And that population gave rise to the Laotian band, which I think is called GX2, that had a smash hit apparently in 2020. That was one of the top 50 most watched videos on YouTube worldwide. So first of all, do you know this band? And are we about to see L-pop arise to compete with K-pop, J-pop and T-pop in that part of the world?
What's T-pop?
Thai pop.
I don't see L-pop coming anytime soon.
No? So what was it about this song that made it such a smash hit in Southeast Asia and one of the top 50 most watched videos on YouTube?
So the song is I would say like you would hear it in like entertainment venue, Lao entertainment venues, the side road restaurants or something like that where people hang out and drink. The song means basically if you fish, you only get fish. If you care about me, you get my heart, something like that. So that's what it actually means. Who could imagine Lao young generation would have the knowledge to compose like song with auto-tune effect, and it hit the top chart.
Okay.
And in Laos, a lot of young people, including me, I'm also young, 22 years old, and we listen to a lot of pop music, like Thai pop music would come first because I would say like because of it's dominated the whole music, Lao music, I would say. Yeah.
Okay. Well, look, the band is called GX2. That's letter G, right? Greece, X2. And the song was "Using Your Heart, You Can Only Look," for anybody who wants to dig it out on YouTube. Moving quickly on, Laos has very close cultural and linguistic affinities with Thailand, but it has close political relationship with Vietnam, and now, of course, economic relationships with China. What's the dynamic between those three? Does the country look to Thailand for maybe religious and cultural inspiration, Vietnam for politics, and China for money, or is that too simplistic a split between the three neighbours?
I think that's a very simplistic split. I think that the relationship between Thailand and Laos is much deeper than just like cultural. I mean, our language and culture are so similar. You could say that we're like brother and sisters in terms of relation. It goes much deeper. And, 450 years ago, the country was split differently, where even parts of Thailand were Lao. And so there's that region in Thailand, Isan, where they're still very Lao-like because they were formerly Lao. And so I think that the relationship and the conflict, by the way, between Laos and Thailand, it goes much deeper than that. Maybe the simple generalization for mainland is correct. But with Vietnam, it's also deeper, I think, because they were allies during the revolution or the regime change. So we don't share much culturally with Vietnam in terms of language and religion and costume. But the allyhood, the brotherhood between Vietnam and Laos has been long-standing. And I think that it's more than just financial, and it's more than just economical with these two countries. With mainland, I'm not sure. It could be economical, maybe. Okay,
last question from me, and then we move on to the questions from the audience. And you'd be glad to know you've answered about a third of them already because they've been withdrawn as having been answered. So my last question is British celebrity chef Gordon Ramsay recently said he thinks that Laos is the top food destination in the world, putting it just before Vietnam. What's your take on that? Is he right? And what's typical of Lao cuisine and how does it differ from Thai cuisine, for example? Again, a lot of questions, but it's all about Gordon Ramsay and his observation that Laos is the top food destination in the world. Tell me about it.
It's already telling that he said that it's before Vietnam, because our food in Vietnam and Laos, we love Vietnamese food in Laos. We eat a lot of Vietnamese food, but they're not similar at all. And, we are so proud. We're so proud that now, like when you Google Laos, Gordon Ramsay comes up. It's like Laos, Gordon Ramsay, food destination. Whereas before it was like people who Google Laos and to be like, Laos, communist? Is it safe? But now they want to know what our food is like, which is awesome. And our food's characteristics are very similar to the Thai characteristics: spicy, sour, savory, all combined and fused into one dish. And it is delicious and you should try it. But, believe me, not because of Gordon Ramsay, because if you've ever seen him try to make pad thai, he doesn't know one noodle from the next. And while I'm proud that he's given us this publicity, he might not know a lot about Lao food.
Okay. All right. Well noted. And audience can maybe search out a Lao restaurant wherever you're listening from. Moving to the questions from the audience. And let's just give a quick answer and we'll try to get through all of them if possible. The most popular question remaining, it says, Mattie, you break the glass ceiling through your work. Shantali, which is the first Lao feature film directed by a woman. How does your country fare when it comes to gender equality and LGBTQ plus issues generally? Mattie.
This is a really good question because most people assume that we do extremely poorly with LGBTQ issues because we're extremely conservative and old-fashioned country, but actually LGBTQ people as a society, as a community, are extremely well accepted, and we love our LGBTQ community. We even have a third gender we call Katoi. And if someone identifies as female or male, if they weren't biologically born that way, we call them that. On my film set, The Long Walk, we had a costume girl who looks very masculine. Like we call her she, is a very effeminate boy. And she refers to herself as she. And I remember the Americans had a very difficult time with that. They kept on calling her he all the time. And the little 9-year-old protagonist of my film, a little country boy from a village outside of Yingzhen, one day turned to one of the Americans and said, "She's a she. How hard is that for you to understand?" And this is what is extremely beautiful about living in Laos. We're very open about that. But on a government level, there's not a lot of official acknowledgement about it. Like a government person will say, if you ask them about it, like, of course, we cannot judge our LGBTQ people. We cannot look down on them because every family has someone who is LGBTQ. But, they're not doing the thing that the Americans or other countries are doing with like legalized marriage or gender change on passports. But at the same time, we all love a big gay wedding. Like we go, it's just they don't have that actual certificate, the actual legal document that says it's an official wedding. But on a local level, within their community, it's acknowledged that they are married and everyone accepts it.
Okay. I'll just take out another one of the popular questions. Water is becoming a more and more serious matter throughout the world, especially where rivers are more controlled by China, which has used increasing amounts, reducing flow in other countries. Is water flow reduced compared to 5 years ago? I'm just reading it as it is. I'm not sure if any of that is actually the case. It could well be. But Manyphone, maybe you might take that. Water flow?
I think the dam constructions and they have effects on the environment overall, but we accept that it does affects on the environment, and we could see that how it also depends on how the weather changes every year. Some year you just see like the Mekong River go very low. Some years you just see the Mekong River like rise up very high, that the government would warn people that they will release water at a specific time in a rainy season. Yeah.
Okay. I guess implicit in the question might have been the effect on water flow of maybe the neighbouring countries. If rivers are being dammed for hydroelectric power, is that having an effect on your neighbours where the flow of water is not what it would have been in the past?
Not really.
No? Okay. All right. Next question. I'm curious, this is the question from one of our audience. I'm curious about the family structure in Laos and the women's role in society. How important is the role of women in the family? Do they get equal opportunity in education and employment? Mattie, do you want to go?
My films are about this. My films are a lot about this.
Yeah.
There is a very patriarchal society on the outside, on the exterior. Our men look strong, they seem strong, they look like they're in charge. But what I really think is interesting about Lao society is women are considered the true power in any household. Like if you go to a household, at the end of the day, it's like, it's not even a matriarchal society, it's the grandmother. And you can get married, you can have a family problem, but at the end of the day, it's usually the grandmother who makes a decision. And you see all the time the powerful man in the front of the family. But what most people on the outside don't realize is that powerful man is being influenced by his wife, who also has her hands on the accounts and is controlling the decisions of the family and the finances of the family. And we put out this appearance that the strong man is in charge, but in most Lao families, the woman is very much in charge.
Manyphone, would you agree with that?
Yeah.
That's how you see it as well?
So basically the husbands of the family would have this kind of like awkward moment with their wife if they want to go out. They always ask their wife, can I go out? Can I go
can I
out
have
with
some
friends?
money?
Okay, so
Can I have some money?
it's interesting.
They ask that with a very low tone of voice, like to avoid get like upsetting her or making her angry or anything. Yeah.
So very traditional in some ways, but very progressive in others.
Yes.
Two last questions from the audience that I think we can squeeze in to both of you. I wonder if you can share your perspective concerning people's perception of Vietnam vis-a-vis China, as Chinese investment is surging, overtaking Vietnam. We might have touched on some of this earlier, but I'll put it to you anyway.
I am half Vietnamese, hence my very short last name. And I can't give you the perspective of what other people think of Vietnam, really, but what I see on a regional and local level is it's been fascinating for everyone, all of the neighboring countries, to observe what is happening with Vietnam and mainland. But we do not feel like mainland is overtaking Vietnam, because from our perspective, from living in the region, it looks like Vietnam is one of the few countries that is very aware that there is a power struggle and that they want to be strong and to not give up too easily the things that they value locally, their cultural way of life. And so for us as observers, it's kind of like, oh, this is interesting. Like, investment and development is great. It's positive, but we have to also think about how Vietnam also values being a bit independent as well. And so we're all in a stasis, in a gray zone right now to see how that relationship will develop, because we don't know how it will develop, but it's kind of fascinating for us.
Manyphone, any additional thoughts on that question?
I think before the huge investment from China, Vietnam provided a lot of assistance to Laos, especially humanitarian assistance. Hundreds of Laos students would go to Vietnam with their scholarship, like full funded scholarship, to study there and learn Vietnamese language. And we have this kind of relationship for years and years. So I don't think we were still. I don't think that they will change the whole thing with the relations, but as China is a big investor here, we still call both of them, China and Vietnam, brothers.
Okay.
We used to become brothers with them.
There's some really interesting questions left. I don't know if I get to them all, but I'll take one anyway. What do Laotians think about tourism in their country? Do they wish to increase it or rather see it as endangering their way of life? Really quickly on that one. Manyphone?
We love tourism. We love tourism. It brings us money. Yeah.
And you don't see it as endangering your way of life?
People who come as tourists should be respectful in the country that they visit. So if they come, then they should embrace our way of life, and they should want to learn and experience our way of life. And if they're respectful tourists, and it shouldn't be endangering our way of life, it should just be a wonderful shared experience. But yeah, I mean, I've seen tourism where there are entire countries that just cater only to tourism, and that is a different story. But I hope that people who come to Laos are not expecting that kind of Disneyland experience, that they're coming to see how we live.
Okay. There is a question from somebody who was interested, Mattie, in your comments about same-sex weddings in Laos. Can you share where you attended such a wedding as they live in Laos for 20 years?
It's very private. It's very personal. It's kind of the same thing where you have like the hotel, you invite all of your friends. There's also the basi, the families are all in attendance, and the families are super happy and proud. Usually if there has been conflict before, I mean, my friends who got married, there wasn't conflict because they had been living, this is not exactly legal either. They've been living together for a number of years before they decided to have the wedding party. And so everybody was very joyous. It was actually one of the wildest parties because it was like, oh, well, finally we get to celebrate it because you guys have just been living in sin together.
Okay.
I say that like jokingly, of course. So it was
I would say,
just like a regular Lao wedding.
Yeah, Lao weddings are typically the wedding itself still maintain the traditions with basi and with the groom coming to the bride's house and to see her face and to.
But even the same sex, they still do it the same way. It's not like they changed the basi, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to get executed for running over time here. So I have one last question about Laos before we close. And that is, what do you think is the biggest misperception that foreigners have about Laos, and what message do you want to tell them? Really quickly. Manyphone?
I would say we don't ride elephants or horses to school.
Okay.
We have motorcycles and we use that.
Okay. Mattie, can you be shorter than that?
We know how to use the internet, and we're not living all in huts.
Okay. All right. I'm really sorry for the remaining questions that I didn't get to them. I've done my best to pick up as many of them as I could. In terms of a final question, it's not actually about Laos at all. Thank you both for your amazing insights into your fabulous country. The next episode of A Closer Look on February 9th is actually on South Korea. Which is a source of significant private investment into Laos. So what's the image of South Korea among Laotians? Is it a popular country, or are Laotians aware of South Korea at all? Really quickly. Mattie?
Extremely aware. We do get a lot of development aid from South Korea. They're very interested in the ASEAN in general. But South Korea, I think personally, has the strongest use of soft power. So culturally, we know their music, we know their fashion, we know their surgeries and their cosmetics. So there's the soft power has really worked in a country like Laos. I've been to South Korea many times and always want to have a co-production with South Korea. And so I think we're very aware and happy to have the relationship with South Korea in Laos.
Okay, and Manyphone, South Korea?
Laos is being advertised in Korea a lot, like huge, like advertisement on their television. So every places you go, you would see like 5 of 10 people are Korean. Actually, they come here as like some say it was because of the nature and so the Koreans here like golfing so much. So golfing is the main thing that attracts them to one of the main things that they would decide to come to Laos. And we also have direct flights from Laos to Korea on Lao Airlines. So
fantastic.
A lot of tourism. Yeah, a lot of tourism.
There are a number of great questions and inquiries in the chat, which I'm hoping Asia Society will be able to pass on to you, and perhaps we can host answers to those questions on the website, but I'll leave that to the Asia Society team. I want to thank you both, Mattie and Manyphone, for fantastic insights. It's so rushed. Your country deserves way more than 45 minutes chat between us, plus the presentation at the start. So that's all for A Closer Look at Laos. Join us again in 2 weeks when we will take a closer look at South Korea. Simona Grano will lead that one. If you haven't already, please go to the asiasociety.org/Switzerland and click on the event and register. Thanks very much, Mattie and Manyphone, for joining us today and for taking us inside Laos with your unique perspectives. And thank you, the audience, for your great questions and for joining us. We'll see you again soon, and sorry for running a couple of minutes over. Take care, everybody.
Thank you for having us.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Korea. Bye-bye.